Hello, my name is Mason Strouse. I have the pleasure of wearing many hats in our community. I am the Family and Community Partnership Director with SendClear. I also have the incredible honor of being the mayor of Clearfield. I am the director of music at the Presbyterian Church, and I'm also the executive director here at CAST, which is the Clearfield Arts Studio Theatre. So I'm just here today to talk a little bit about kind of theater and the arts in Clearfield County and share a little bit of information with you. So, entertainment in Clearfield County hasn't always looked like it does today, obviously, before Netflix and before YouTube and everything kind of being streamed into our lives. And even before television into our homes, people gathered in one central place, and that was the theater. And these theaters were about more than just entertainment. They truly were a gathering place for our communities, social hubs, and in many ways, they were our community's connections to the outside world. In the early 1900s, Clearfield County experienced what is often called the golden age of theaters, and that was happening all across the country. Downtown in places like Clearfield and in Du Bois, and even in a lot of our smaller communities, we saw movie houses, and most of them were large single screen theaters. They were often beautifully designed and beautifully decorated. Some of them had balconies in the back that you could hang out in. And that was where people went to see a movie. Going to the theater was not a casual event. People got dressed up, and it was really part of their social lives. And just as important, they didn't go to the movies to be entertained, but they went there to learn something, to gain information. Before we had televisions in our home and 24-hour news networks, theaters ran what were called newsreels before the main events. So people would go and they'd get caught up on their current events, state events, national events, and even events from around the world before they were entertained with a movie. One of the best surviving examples of that history is the Ritz Theater right here in downtown Clearfield. The Ritz has been part of our community for almost a century now. The building itself is much older, and when it opened, it seated hundreds of people, and it quickly kind of became our community's center of life. Imagine for a moment that families are gathering, people are milling about town, they're really excited to come together to learn something, to watch those newsreels, and then to be entertained as well with a movie. So the Ritz wasn't just showing movies, it was really connecting Clearfield and our communities to the world. And that really hasn't changed a whole lot. While other small movie theaters, especially in small towns, are going away, the Ritz Theater has adapted, they've evolved, and we're certainly lucky to have one of the oldest and longest serving movie theaters right here in downtown Clearfield. The next piece is right along the same wave, same length there. The with the movies is the in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we saw a lot of drive-in movie theaters. And while some of those have disappeared, Clearfield County is fortunate to still have the Super 322 drive-in movie theater. So that's another fantastic opportunity for people to gather uniquely under the stars and watch a movie with their family and friends. And again, this is another, connection to a past life, an era that's gone by, but still one that people really enjoy today. But theater in Clearfield County isn't just about movies. We do have a rich tradition of live performances as well. That story begins in about 1947 with the formation of what was called the Old Town Players. They performed at the band shell at the SB Elliott State Park. And in just a few years, they produced more than 100 plays. They did mainly summer productions, but they were up there for a couple decades. And so people would try to beat the heat, get out to the state park, and watch a show at the band shell. So that was quite a unique experience for our area. And even back then, tourism's a big thing now, but even back then, people were coming from all over the place to see these people in the woods putting on shows. So that was quite a unique experience. Unfortunately, in 1971, the band shell was kind of dilapidated and they had to close it, so they lost their space. But the following year, in 1972, a new theater group popped up And that was in the basement of the St. John's Lutheran Church here in Clearfield, and they were called the St. John's Studio Theatre. That was, like I said, in the basement of a church with 7-foot ceilings and support poles right in the middle of the stage, and so another unique experience, but that started as a summer program, summer opportunity, mostly college kids coming home for the summer. But then it evolved into a year round opportunity to provide different productions, classes, workshops, things like that. And then in 1982, they developed what you see here. This is CAST, the Clearfield Arts Studio Theatre. And CAST really was a true home for all of the arts in Clearfield. At the time, it was very unique, actually, in the fact that it was not just a performing arts center, but a center for all of the arts. And they had classes for dance, art, music, along with lots of storage for sets and props and costumes and things like that. And that was kind of unique at the time, especially in a small town like Clearfield. And that was recognized at the time by the state and even at a national level. There was a lot of hubbub about it at that time. So, what makes CAST especially meaningful, at least to me anyway, is that when they did that, this was a Western Auto building. It was a single story. Back where the stage is and kind of the backstage area, that was a stable. So they took these buildings, kind of mashed them all together, put a second story on and put more storage back there and everything, and made CAST. And that was all done through thousands of hours of volunteer labor and volunteer efforts. And again, that was all recognized at the time for the incredible amount of work that was put into CAST. And so that's just something really, really special that we have in our community. And likewise, just over the mountain in Du Bois, we have what is called the Ritz Theater. And that building that houses the Ritz Theater was originally constructed in 1887, not as a theater, but as a church. It served that purpose for more than a century, and it was one of the only buildings that survived a major fire that Du Bois had in the 1800s. So the church unfortunately closed, and in 1992, a group of leaders in that area transformed it into what it is now, another performing arts center. So today, the Ritz Theater hosts plays, musicals, concerts, and youth productions, and all sorts of programming over there as well. And it's a great example of how a historic building that lost its purpose was repurposed, reimagined, and able to, kind of be brought back to life. So that was really exciting as well. Today, theater in Clearfield County looks a lot different, but it remains just as important. Instead of simply attending performances, people are creating them. So we're always looking for people who want to, of course, act on the stage, but there's also opportunities to get involved behind the stage, to build sets, to paint sets, to volunteer, to greet your neighbors and your friends when they're coming in and offer them a program and, kind of support in that way. We see some really unique opportunities with people who attend our shows. Of course, our community members attend, but we also see people from other communities from all over the state. We've had people from out of state, and we've had people from out of the country. We're in a very unique spot in Clearfield County. We're kind of like right in the middle of Pennsylvania. People are traveling through all the time. And so we've really had some good experiences, unique experiences with the people that stop here. And when people are coming into places like Clearfield to visit CAST and other unique opportunities, they're supporting our businesses, they're shopping in our stores, eating in our restaurants, enjoying our beautiful scenery, just walking around and, hopefully saying, I want to come back and visit. So it's really a great opportunity that we have here with all these different theater opportunities. And theater in our county continues to expand, and it's beyond just one stage. It lives in our schools, our churches, and different community events. And I think it's important to recognize that sometimes we take that for granted. We have incredible opportunities in our small communities. We have community choirs, community bands, art galleries, thriving arts and music and arts education programs in our schools. In our communities this size and other parts of the country, you don't always see that. So Clearfield is very, very lucky to have these kinds of things. And not just like one of each of those, we have several of those things in our communities. And so that's just really, truly something that I think makes Clearfield County very special. So when we look at the history of theaters in Clearfield County and we talk about the movie houses and we talk about the Ritz and the Wrights and the Super 322 and our ancestors at the Old Town Players and cast, it's really part of something bigger. We're looking at our community. We are, it isn't just about what's happening on stage and on the screen. It's about what's happening around us and as people gather and participate. And I think that's an important part of our story here in Clearfield. And as someone who has the privilege of being involved both in our community and in the arts, it's really an incredible opportunity to see how important that is in our area and to our community. So thanks for listening, and I hope you learned something today. And we are certainly proud of our history, our theater history, our arts education history, and hopefully we can continue that for many years to come.